Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. And I am honored to have somebody who I've admired for a long, long time. She probably doesn't realize that, but I've admired her. And when she agreed to come on the podcast, I was like, yes, I'm delighted. I absolutely get her. Joeanna Caffrey, we are honored to have you here on the podcast. You are probably one of the most renowned florists and retail florists. Like you have a good few shops, flower shops. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us, how did flowers happen for you?
Thank you very much for having me on. I also admire you greatly, which I just told you a few minutes ago. I think you're absolutely fabulous, what you've achieved with the flower school. But I always naturally adored flowers. Um, like they're always in my home. I surround myself with flowers that make me happy. I really have a pure passion for it. It came from my mother. She adored making the house a home. And I feel like I've gotten that from her. So she would always be decorating the house for all the occasions, all year round. We would have a wreath on our hall door. She would have been decorating for Easter, kind of making Easter trees, hanging eggs, making floral arrangements at home. Like with the fireplace, so she'd be decorating that all year round, even,
Yeah,
autumn. And outside the front door, she'd have kind of two big troughs with autumn leaves in them with two big pumpkins. She'd
yeah,
be carving the pumpkins, and then at Christmas, she'd be making bows to match the wallpaper and the curtains in our sitting room. So I really did get it from her. We had a pub when I was small, and she was always decorating it. She really should
yeah.
have been in interiors or floristry. So
Right.
I kind of always felt I never thought about floristry as a career. It was more interiors actually initially. Um, but actually I lost my mom quite young when I was 15. And then I also lost my dad 10 years later when I was 25.
Right.
And I did want to do interiors, but at the time when I was kind of, you know, doing my leaving cert, my dad was pushing me to do a business degree. He kind of took me away from the interior side. He just pushed and pushed and pushed that I do a business degree. So I did. I did a marketing degree in DIT. And my dad was in the drinks industry when we were growing up. Um, and he kind of pushed me into that as well. He wanted me to have a secure job. So the interiors
Yeah.
kind of went out the window at the time. So I started sales repping. I was on the road for a few years. And to be honest, it was the best thing I ever did because I learned um, all different personalities, how to speak to different personalities. And you meet so many people when you're out on the road. I was calling into pubs and off licenses, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Meeting so many people every day. And then after 2 years of doing that, I got a job in the marketing department. And I worked my way up and I became brand manager for a champagne brand and a wine brand. And I really enjoyed it. But in that time, my dad passed away. Um, and then about a year after he died, they offered me redundancy or a promotion into a different position. Anyway, I was really at a crossroads, didn't know what to do. One of my best friends said to me, "Look, if you take the redundancy, I could go traveling with you." So anyway, I did it.
Right.
Now in that job, I was always kind of doing display, like all the window displays for the brands. And if we had kind of like a conference or anything, I'd be the one kind of decorating the room
Yeah.
and doing all that. But floristry and interiors had not come into my head, especially floristry, it just hadn't. So I went traveling. And this is a true story. I was in a room, there was two of my friends, three of us went on the trip. Another friend from work actually came. And we were sharing a room with like two little single beds in it. It was my turn to sleep on the floor. And we had been out the night before and we were tired. And we were watching B movie on
Yeah.
the TV in Thailand. And I saw the little woman, and she was a florist. And I literally had a light bulb moment. And I was like, oh my God, I think that's what I want to do.
I want to do. Yeah.
Honestly, that was the
That's
moment.
amazing. That
And
is
then
amazing.
rang my sister and I was like, floristry, I think I would love it. Like, it's never, and my aunt does flowers and it never came to me. So
Yeah.
then I came home and I worked with my aunt. She was doing a wedding just to see if I liked it. And I loved it. So then I wanted to do a course. And at the time, there wasn't really much available here. So I looked to London. My sister lived in London at the time. And I found a course, Jane Packer, in London. And I went and I did it. And honestly, it was like the most freeing time in my life. I just adored it
Right.
so much. I'd
Yeah.
been through a lot with my family and that in the years before. And I just adored it. Like I
Yeah.
loved it. Every day I'd bring a flower arrangement home to my sister. Her house was like a flower shop.
Isn't it amazing? They say that when you find a job you love, that you never work a day in
Oh,
your
my
life.
dad
And it
always said
is,
that. My dad
yeah,
always said that. So I just loved it. So the course was like 5 weeks long, and I lived with my sister, and she had a new baby, and it was just a lovely time. And then I did some work experience in London. I went to McQueen's and I did a couple of weeks with them.
yeah,
I still had a bit of my redundancy money, which was amazing that I could do this because I didn't have any money.
yeah.
I had nothing. Um, so I did a few weeks work experience with them, and I spent a lot of time looking at all the florists in London, and I still do. I still look all the time at everyone
I
else.
see that. I see that on your social media when you go on holidays. You
Oh,
always end up at a flower shop.
oh, I go everywhere I go. I go to a flower shop and I go to a supermarket as well. Uh, I love traveling. So does my husband. I love
Yeah,
seeing what other countries are doing. He's passionate about what he does too. But then so I came home from the course and I felt I needed more experience. So I got a job in a flower company and I worked there for a year.
okay,
And I just adored it. I
yeah,
just loved it. I loved working for them. I loved the people I worked with. I'm still friendly with the people I work with. Some of them are still in the floristry industry. Um, I just really loved it.
yeah,
And then after a year, I kind of started to do a few things like through Facebook and that. And then it kind of started to take a little bit of traction. So then I kind of went out on my own. Then I was living in a teeny tiny cottage in Windy Arbor in Dublin. And I was just doing bouquets for family and friends, but it started to kind of,
fresh to grow. Yeah,
yeah, and I went out on Valentine's Day. So like my cottage was just full of flowers and I was just so passionate. I still am. But like when I was starting out, I used to spray all the cards with perfume and I'd text all the customers after I delivered them all myself. I sourced the flowers myself, made them all, got the packaging, did everything myself. I was on my own. And delivered them all myself. And then I'd send a text message after. And I tried to do that for a long time, but then
yeah,
it obviously becomes a bit harder. And then as time went on, like none of this happened overnight. Like I'm 15 years in it now. That was 15 years ago. So I did that for probably a year or two, just doing bouquets. I'd go to Smithfield, get the flowers, make bouquets, deliver them around myself. And then I was close to a little store called, well, it wasn't little, it was quite a nice kind of like deli and coffee and lovely supermarket called Wild and Green in Monkstown, or sorry, in Milltown. And I used to just go down there for a coffee and I got talking to the owners and I started to do a little flower stand there. And I supplied the flowers there every day, just get them into my cottage, condition them, put them into, I bought nice zinc buckets, nice little
yeah,
chalkboards, and I'd do the stand there and I'd service it myself, just going in. You'd have to go in nearly every day.
yeah.
You really, and I
Because they
learned a
don't
lot
know
doing
how
it.
to mind.
No. And a customer comes in, takes a little bunch out, and then it's not drinking water, and the stems have dried, and that bunch is gone then.
Yeah,
So I did that for a while, and then I was needing more flowers, and I was ordering from Holland, but my volume wasn't high enough. So I met this supplier in Dublin called Dave, and he was kind of supplying a lot of the florists in Dublin. He had a warehouse in Dublin Port, and I was starting to do weddings as well. Like I did a wedding of a friend, and from that I got another wedding, and the venues started to um, recommend me. But I
right.
would basically get the flowers delivered to the venue and I'd bring all my sundries in the car and I'd ask the venue would they give me like a shed and I'd
Yeah,
make everything in the shed and I'd be up all night
yeah,
and I would do the whole wedding on my own. Um, and then as time went on, it was getting a little bit bigger. So my aunt helped me out. And some of my friends helped me here and there. And then I was starting to kind of grow out of the cottage. So I took a little shed down the lane, grew out of that. And then the flower supplier I asked him, could I have a little corner of his warehouse?
yeah,
And so he gave me a corner. Um, and I worked from there for a few years. And he had a big fridge of flowers, and it worked out perfectly for both of us. So I'd go in, I'd get the flowers I needed, and I'd pay him for whatever I took. But he always had a stock
yeah,
to hand.
yes,
And I had all my little sundries on a shelf, and I worked from there. And then I kind of took on one staff member, and then it just started to grow. Then I got the contract for Fresh, which is a flower shop. No, sorry, not a flower shop, a convenience shop. It's
Yeah.
still there. It's down in Grand Canal. And I did a big flower stand there. And
Yeah.
I did it every week. And I'd have to call to it every other day, basically. It was a lot. It was,
It's funny listening to you, Joanna,
yeah,
because that is like people think it happens overnight. And
didn't,
you have just shown, like,
didn't.
literally from the beginning and
No,
how much hours and how much
yeah.
work
And it's passion.
and
It won't
passion.
work if you don't
Yeah.
have the passion for what you're
Yeah.
doing. And I do have the passion. Like, I really do. Like, you wouldn't keep going because you don't make any money for a long time.
No.
You make ends meet.
Yes.
You know, you get a job, it pays for the next job.
Yeah.
Um, and like I continued like that for quite a while. And then I was doing more weddings, loving it. Like I was so
Yeah.
busy all day long. And then I thought maybe would I thought at this stage now I'm like, okay, I'm doing fresh. Fresh is getting harder and harder. I'm doing more weddings and I'm like, maybe I'll just do weddings. So I was thinking I would just do weddings. Every weekend I do a wedding. But then it was very hard with getting people to help me just a few days a week because people were looking for full-time work and it's really hard to find florists. It still is. So I was finding it really hard that side of the business too. And then I didn't have a truck or a van. I'd have to borrow. I used to borrow off Dave, the guy that I borrowed the warehouse from. And like, oh, I had nightmares, like with the wipers would go on my way down. I'd like do the whole wedding, pack the whole van myself, drive down in the middle of the night. The window wipers wouldn't work. Like it was hard, but I kept going and I loved it. And I would feel so good after finishing a wedding and the
Yeah.
bride was being so delighted with what I'd created for her. Like it was just such a joyous occasion. Um, and then I was thinking, would I like the retail thing? I always loved flower shops, but I wasn't sure I wanted to have to be in the same place every day. So I wasn't sure. And then I was like, maybe I'll just do a pop-up. So I saw a little shop in Sandymount there was no sign on it. It was for sale. Sorry, it was for sale. So I rang them and I just said, would you rent to me for a short period of time? And they said no. I kept ringing them. I rang them. I racked their head. I rang them like every few days. This was kind of like August time. I was like, I just
Yeah.
wanted for Christmas to test it and see. And I just said, look, I won't bother you. I'll pay you cash and I'll do all the electrics in it. I'll paint it. I'll put my own sign up. I'll do everything. I will not bother you, I promise. So
Yeah.
anyway, eventually they were sick of me annoying them and they gave it to me. So I went over to Holland and I bought all my bits and pieces. It was amazing. Like I loved it.
Yeah.
And came back, painted the shop, got a friend to kind of like do the electrics for me. And got my sign made by another friend, and because my background is marketing, I kind of had contacts with that kind of thing.
Yes.
So I decorated the whole shop and opened for Christmas. Just 6 weeks, and it went really, really well. Like, and it ended up in the Irish Times, and that's how Avoca came about. They saw it. So somebody from Avoca, who I actually happened to go to college with, was reading the newspaper, and it was just a little caption about my flower shop in
Yeah.
Sandymount that it had opened. And she asked to meet me for a coffee. So I met her and she said, look, Avoca are looking for somebody to do flowers at their place in Rathcoole. And I was like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Like, what? I was just like, couldn't believe it. Even though when I actually tried to keep Sandymount, but they wouldn't give it to me. So I had to close it after the 6 weeks. Um, and then I was like, I was there like 7 days a week, and I was like, I don't know if I want, and that was a busy period where it's great when you're busy, but when you're not busy and you're not making money, that's a different kettle of fish.
Yeah.
So I really wasn't sure, but when Avoca came along, I was like, I just couldn't say no to it.
You
Like,
couldn't say no. No.
absolutely couldn't. I was like, this is an opportunity that just does not happen. And that's one thing I would say. I didn't say no to anything. I said no to nothing that came my way, or when I was asked to do anything, I did it.
Yeah.
And I was delighted to do it. So Avoca came along, but that again, that took 2 years from that first meeting. That took 2 years. So
Wow.
in that
Right.
time, it took 2 years with contracts and everything for that to actually happen. And
Yeah.
there was times when I didn't think it was going to happen. They were promising to send the contracts and all that. I mean, they were very busy. They were opening all their outlets.
Yeah.
But, I wasn't sure it was going to happen. But then I remember the contract finally came through on my birthday in
Wow.
2014. I'm there 10 years now, 2014. And I was like, oh, that's a sign now, and then I was doing weddings in that time and I was moving house and just kept going like with the weddings.
Yeah.
And I was becoming quite well known in in weddings, like the venues where I was
Yeah.
traveling all over the country. Um, and then so when I signed with the Voca, it was going to be in Rathcoole and they were going to build the little shop outside for me. But I was very involved in the design of it, which was
Yes.
great.
So you
Um,
can put your own stamp on it.
yeah, yeah. So then I was still over in Dublin Port in the little corner of Dave's warehouse. And then he was leaving that warehouse and I was kind of stuck for a while. I ended up moving in. There was an antique dealer next door in a huge warehouse with just antique furniture piled up in mountains with water coming through the roof. I was in there for a while after that,
Yeah.
making my flowers. It was, yeah.
Well, I suppose, and we do say it about
I was
flowers too.
really
You have to
happy
be
though.
adaptable, but my God, have you been adaptable and worked to what was thrown at
Worked.
you or what was any
Yeah.
situation? And I
Yeah.
think that is probably key to being a florist, because when you do end up in a venue, you don't know what is going to happen, and you have to be. There's nothing straightforward. You have to be
No,
adaptable.
no. And like I have worked in every single job in my business, I've done it myself. I don't feel like you can run a business unless you've done every single job yourself and are willing to do every job yourself. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I will do every single job that it takes to get a job done.
Yeah.
Like you never become above anything in in life, actually.
In life it
Um,
is true, and like we say that even when like our past students or whatever, they start out, we're like, everybody washes buckets. It's not just the juniors. If buckets need to be
no,
washed, they need to be washed. It's as simple as that.
no, and that ego, just like I've no time for it. I was
Yeah.
like, no, like you have to work hard and that's it, no matter what position you're in.
And it is, and I think like you're showing it here, saying it's not an easy job. People
No,
think you're playing with flowers. It's,
no,
go and
and
do
it's
a 2 week
pretty.
flower course. You can open a business. It really isn't that. There's a lot more than just arranging flowers in it. Like, as we say,
Oh,
you see the end product, but they don't see all what has happened to get those flowers to there in the first
no,
place.
no, it's exhausting. Like, and all the planning, like,
Yeah.
the planning I have to do now is insane.
Yeah. How
You
many
know,
shops have you got now, Joanna?
so I have four. So I opened the one in Avoca. So when I opened Rathcoole, I then took a space in Green Oak Industrial Estate, like a studio close to
Yeah.
it. And that was great because I was close to the shop and I could do my weddings from there because it was getting hard at the weddings, like lugging the flowers down there, trying to make it there. So I kind of took the warehouse. That kind of changed kind of life a little bit and made it a little bit easier for me. Hard financially though. And I was working the shop by myself when it opened, but then I realized this isn't sustainable because I can't. You
No, you
can't.
can't do everything.
So
Yeah.
I started to take on some people then, but very slowly, very
Yeah.
slowly. And then no, actually, it was the same year. Yeah, everything happened very, like, after I opened Devoca Rathcoole, then things like kind of multiplied. And I said yes to everything. Arnott came along, asked me to do a pop-up for Christmas, like that Christmas. So I opened
Yeah.
in April in Rathcoole. Arnott asked me to do a pop-up. I said yes. I was like, amazing opportunity. And then the shop in Kilmechanic came up and I saw it was idle and I said, any chance that
Yeah.
I could? And they said yes. So then I opened that shop as well. So I opened three shops in the space of like 8 months.
Wow.
Um, and it was hard. It was very hard.
Oh, it is. Yeah. I
Oh
can't
my
imagine.
God, it was very hard.
What
And
was your biggest challenge? Like, what was the biggest challenge that, running, never mind even opening the three shops within that short space of time, but what was your biggest challenge of running them shops?
being on my own,
Yeah.
running them, I didn't have anyone to bounce things off. I wasn't in a relationship at the time. I had been, but then I wasn't. And I was on my own. Now, looking back, it was the best thing for me. Um, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Because I had no distractions. My whole life was my business at that
Yeah.
stage. And like, if I didn't have the passion for what I was doing, you wouldn't keep going. You just wouldn't do
No,
it.
no.
It's not, the money doesn't happen. It's like, it's very, no matter like, if you have the shops and you have the weddings, the money thing is still really hard, because when you start to grow, and my aunt actually gave me advice when I started, she said, don't get too big too quickly, because it's hard, you have to take on people, and then it's hard with money. And I did get quite big quickly. I opened those 3 shops in 8 months. And then then they were building Dunboyne, Avoca, and they asked me to go in there. So of course I did that. Arnott's had just been a pop-up. And I did that for the Christmas, and then I came out, and then they asked me would I go back in for spring, and I did. But to be honest, I made no money.
Yeah.
So I was working around the clock, made no money, but my God, am I thankful for the opportunity
Well,
that I had.
that's it. And you know what? If you hadn't have done it, you would have always said, gosh, if I had done
No,
that,
and I had a
you
big
know?
window at the side of Arnott's with
Yeah,
my name on it.
exactly.
I was like, oh my God, like
Yeah,
insane. So
absolutely.
thankful to Arnott's. Like, it was absolutely incredible to get my name out there and build my brand. You know what I
And you
mean?
really have, like, and it really has, like you have become like the, I suppose for us in the school, we always say to our students, look at Joanna's shops, look at her shops, look what
Mhm.
she's doing. Like we would use you as an example. And to be honest with you, I didn't know your backstory. I didn't know any of this. This is the first time I'm hearing all this. And I'm sort of delighted, because a lot of people would assume you had lots of money and you just opened these shops,
I had
and
nothing.
people don't
No,
realize what goes on behind the scenes.
no, and I really had nothing.
Yeah,
I had the redundancy money. Like,
yeah,
I didn't have money from my parents, honestly.
yeah. I
I
remember,
really
Joanna,
didn't.
when we opened our flower shop, when my mum opened the flower shop, 40 years ago. And the first weekend at the shop, it was in Easter. We opened at Easter. It was a Mother's Day. I think it was actually Mother's Day. It was or Paddy's Day. It was either Paddy's Day, Mother's Day. It was one of those that we opened. But when we opened the shop, we had no money for float. They had no money. And my dad went home and he got the troker box. That's as true as God. And got the troker box and brought it into the shop. So we had change to give people, because they had no money. Like we were literally, and I remember the accountant saying to us, you have to reach, I can't, we say it was £100 a day. You have to reach £100 a day. And we would stay open longer and longer until we hit whatever the figure was, he said that we had to take in. Like, and we could be open 12, 14 hours, and then it was like, okay, now we never closed early because we went over it. We always stayed open. But people don't see that
No.
side of business. And I'm sure it's with all businesses. And I know your husband runs his own business, and I'm sure it's exactly the same. He works as hard as anybody that's running their own business. Staff, I know, like, again, talking around the industry, staff can be a huge thing in retail. What's maybe the 2 or 3 main things you look for when you're looking for staff or employing staff?
Passion.
Yeah.
Sorry, this my sister's ringing me there.
You're great.
Sorry about that. I don't know how to. So the 3 things I'd look for somebody: a kind person,
Yeah.
passionate about flowers, um, kindness. Like, honestly, kindness
Yeah.
is so
It's
important.
funny because I
And a
always ask this
bubbly
question.
person. A bubbly
Yeah.
person's important in retail.
I always
But
ask this question,
kindness,
and skill is never the first thing people say. It's always personality, kindness, passion, whatever, because we can teach skills to anybody.
yeah.
But if they haven't got the
I
personality,
100%. I do look for experienced, but it's very, very difficult to
yeah,
find very experienced. I find, um, we end up training a lot of people ourselves, and
yeah,
they stay on with me, and that's absolutely incredible.
yeah,
Um, but you need to have a passion for flowers, because it's not actually a pretty job. They're pretty to look at and all of that, but it's a
cold.
filthy job. You're freezing, you're
Do you manage
exhausted.
out in Avoca in Kilmechanic,
You're a
and even I
mechanic.
suppose Rathcoole? It must be so cold.
It is so cold. I give really warm uniforms to
Yeah,
the girls, fleeces. We wear thermals. Like, I wear
yeah,
thermals all the time because I'm basically outside. Like, you mightn't see me in a shop every day, but I am there.
Yeah.
Like I am there in the background. I'm in my workshop. I'm on my laptop. I'm in touch with the girls constantly. I
Yeah.
am extremely hands-on involved in the
Yeah.
business. Um, I would actually love nothing more than to be in the flower shop just making flowers because that's actually my core passion.
Yeah.
Running business and being at my computer is not my
Yeah.
passion. It's
And you
not
know,
what I want
we
to do.
say that about creatives. Creative people want to be creative, not necessarily doing accounts and doing ordering
Yeah,
the flowers is probably it. It's a nice fun thing to do. But
yeah, but then you have to plan for your order. Like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
have huge spreadsheets. I've got 3 screens on my desk
yeah,
looking at all the flower suppliers, looking at my spreadsheet. I estimate down to the stem what goes into every bouquet in my shop on the occasions. So Christmas, Valentine's, Mother's Day, I have a
yeah,
huge spreadsheet where I design all the bouquets that are on my website. Um, like I design them personally. I go put the flowers together and I love doing that.
yeah,
And then I will write down all my stems that have gone into everything, and then I'll put it onto an Excel sheet. And I have to do that with all my bouquets. And then I have to decide how many numbers go into the shops, how many numbers of bouquets that we're going to make. So at those busy periods, we make in my studio to supply and help the girls in the shops because they can't keep up with the demand. But
yeah.
they're continually making the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
And you know
it's
what?
all
And
that
it's back
work
to, as
behind
you
it.
say, that part of the business, the figures, knowing your numbers, knowing your
Yeah,
figures, knowing your stem count, that is so important. It's the success and the profitability of your business.
it's essential.
I've really enjoyed talking to you. I have a couple of quick fire questions for you. Okay. I suppose this is like asking you who's your favorite child. What's your favorite flower?
I have so many favorite flowers, but I think if I was to pick one, it would be a coral peony rose,
Okay.
coral sunset,
Coral. Yeah, it
or
is
coral
absolutely beautiful.
charm.
And I
Coral
love how
charm.
they change. I love
Oh,
how
that's
they,
why I love them.
I
They
think that's the
change from like
dream.
deep coral to like, ivory. They're amazing.
Ivory.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is
they're
incredible.
amazing.
They are an amazing flower. And I think as well, when people get them in a bouquet, they're so shocked to see that transformation. I think
They're
it's sort of
fantastic.
magic. And you say to them, watch the magic happening,
Like
you
I
know.
remember asking a supplier, I was designing a wedding and it was a particular, I'm like so in tune with colours, and it was a particular colour peony and I couldn't source it. And all it was a more developed coral charm. It
Yeah.
was like a faded coral charm. That was the colour I
Yeah.
wanted. But
I
I
know.
learned
Yeah.
that then over time, you
Yeah.
know.
And that is the thing, I suppose, what is the biggest thing, I suppose, that you have learned in the last 15 years? I've been, or 20 years, I've been a florist, really. You're only 50, you're 15 years in business, but like 20 years of flowers. What's your biggest learning thing that you probably know now that you wished you knew all them years ago?
My biggest learning. You have to keep going, you
Yeah.
know, because there's days when it's hard. I have 3 babies now. That's very challenging for me with my business. The most
Yeah.
challenging. I'm constantly battling because I'm a mom now. I've always wanted my own little family and I have it, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. But that's my biggest challenge, and learning to keep going with it. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know if I can do this,
Yeah.
you know, because it's so
Do you
hard.
find it hard to let go, like to sort of give the responsibility to somebody else?
A hundred
Or,
percent.
yeah,
I can't. Even when I was
yeah,
really ill last year, and I was working from the hospital on my
yeah,
laptop, on my phone. Um, like I can let go, and I'm trying to learn to trying to
yeah,
separate the two.
yeah.
Because when I'm with my kids, I'm like, I might even be flower arranging. I'm always doing flowers at home. I fill my house with flowers the whole time. Like
And
look
I
at
was
that
watching it,
flowers
and
there.
anyone that is watching this here today, you'll find Joanna's details in the description below. Go follow her on Instagram, because I was watching you the other day and you had Violet helping you. Oh no, it was Iris you had helping you do the
Yeah,
Iris,
because
was
the
it?
three of
Yes.
them were there. The three of them are there. They're always there. Um, that's the biggest challenge for me. But
Yeah.
like, I love what I do,
I
and
say you
I'll
wouldn't change
always
it
be
for the
doing
world.
flowers. I'll
Yeah.
always be doing flowers. Yeah.
Yeah. Joanna, listen, thank you so much. I have absolutely really enjoyed this, and it's just not long enough. We'll have to do it again at a later
Yeah.
stage, and catch up more about running your business and any advice that you have for flowers. What is your one tip for a florist, a new florist coming into the industry? What sort of advice would you give them?
Work in it.
Yeah,
Work with a florist, like an established florist. That's the only way you'll learn.
Yeah,
because
it
it's
is.
only working in it that you really learn the fundamentals of floristry. It doesn't actually matter what flowers you use. You can pick the flowers that you love, when you know the technique. It's the
Yeah,
technique and the mechanics behind it. There's
yeah,
huge mechanics behind flowers, and health and safety is massive behind flowers.
yeah,
Like, building an arch, you have to know how to build the structure, the
yeah.
structural.
Stability. Yes.
You're nearly like an engineer.
Yeah, it is. And we
Figuring
often say
out
that because all our family are in construction. So a lot of how we teach with arches and pillars and candelabras, they're all from construction
construction, and you'll
parts,
only learn that working in it.
Yes,
So
you
I
do.
advise to work in it, and
Yeah,
then see that you might discover when you're working in it, this isn't what I thought. This isn't as pretty as I thought. Because it's
yeah.
not. It's
It's not what you
beautiful
want.
to
Yeah,
look at flowers, but to work with them, it's hard.
it
It's
is.
physically demanding, and I think if you work with another florist, you'll know whether it's for you
You
or not.
will know. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Joanna, listen, thanks a million. I've absolutely loved chatting with you. And
me
we
too.
hope to have you on again very soon.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
so
most
much.
welcome.